Welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Someone Six Sports. My special guest is Ted Goldberg, and we will be talking Buffalo Bills football. Um, how is your night going so far?
I'm inside, which is quite an improvement from Monday when I was outside shooting the Bills Patriots game and freezing myself to the bone. I've finally got sensation back in my fingers, which is a wonderful thing. It's quite something to be able to feel your hands and your feet and your fingers and your toes. Driving was an adventure, as I'm sure anybody in Buffalo can attest to today, but I'm back home and it's warm and my cats are somewhere. So all things considered, I can't complain.
That's good. Um, do you how do you think the Bills should improve on defense?
The funny thing is, I know a lot has been made of the Bills' defense and how they played against the Patriots. Obviously, pass defense we can't talk about because the Patriots attempted a grand total of 3 passes because apparently they took a 1947 Navy playbook with them into Orchard Park. So really the question is the run defense. What were the biggest issues that they had in that game? And obviously, first thing we can look at is that 64-yard run from Damian Harris. I mean, he had a cutback lane and there was just nobody there. I don't know if it's a case of the Bills just weren't physical enough or if they were just undisciplined. I know they talk about gap integrity, or at least that was something we had heard a lot in the last couple of years. On a play like that, I mean, people were not sticking to their gaps. People were over pursuing. And I know there have been some pretty detailed breakdowns about all the mistakes that Bills defensive linemen and the linebackers and even all the way to the secondary. I mean, everybody messed up on that play. I think it's really the run defense has been an issue for most of the season. I mean, Jonathan Taylor had his way with this defense. And for a few weeks, we could say, oh, well, Star Lotulelei is not there. He's their best run stuffer. Once he comes back, the run defense will really be shored up. And that was obviously not quite the case against New England. I don't think the run defense was that bad. I mean, there were a couple of drives New England had where they just chewed up the clock and they were getting their 4 or 5 yards of carry, but New England had 10 drives. One was an end of half, one was the end of the game. So they had 8 drives. And of those 8 drives, they produced 14 points. So I don't even know if the defense was really all that terrible. I do think they were a little undisciplined on a few runs against New England. And that's something that hopefully the Bills will try to remedy just, by watching film, because they're not going to be signing run stuffing nose tackles off the streets. It's too late for trades at this point. So I think they're just going to have to look inward, watch a lot of film and just kind of practice stuff because it's not like they can lift weights and that'll make them a more disciplined bunch.
How do you think Tremaine Edmonds did on Monday night when they played the Patriots?
I think he was a little too aggressive at times. Obviously he knew that they were going to be running the ball a lot, pretty much every play. But I would have liked to see him either try to get off blocks more, try to get around guys more. It just seemed like he was getting sucked up a lot by New England's blockers, and he was just having trouble getting past people, which is kind of an issue with Edmonds because, when you look at him, and people have always said, oh, he's an athletic freak. He's got really long arms. He's fast and strong. And he does all these things well, but he had some trouble shedding blocks on Monday. Obviously I wonder how much of an issue it was not having AJ Klein. I mean, I like AJ Klein as a run stuffing linebacker. Coverage, we've got some issues there, but as a run stuffer, he has been a pretty nice player the last couple of seasons. And now that he's on the reserve COVID list, it'd be really nice for the Bills to get him back. Maybe ahead of Tampa Bay, although that's not a game. I don't imagine Leonard Fournette's going to get 25 carries. That's going to be really, how does this Bills pass defense respond with Trey White out? How do they cover, Godwin and the other guy? Oh my God, I can't remember his name. The other receiver that Godwin and Mike Evans, that's his name. Not a great, point being, not a great game for Tremaine Edmonds. Obviously, he holds himself to a high standard. I'm sure he knows he didn't play well either.
How do you think the Bills will do on Sunday against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
I don't think they're going to win. I think this is a team that you look at the quarterbacks that they've defeated this season, and who's the best quarterback they beat? Okay, Patrick Mahomes on the Chiefs, fine. Who's the second best quarterback they beat? Tua Tagovailoa, who's like okay, but they've really struggled against decent starting quarterbacks. They've struggled against very good starting quarterbacks, and they've beaten all the garbage quarterbacks that have been thrown at them. You know, the Mike Whites of the world, they've played really well. Jacoby Brissett couldn't do anything in that game. The backup gun on Houston, I can't even, Davis Mills, they made him look like a ninth string quarterback, which he would probably be on most teams. But this team I think they're going to struggle against Tampa Bay. I think no Trey White is really going to hurt. I know Tampa will not have Antonio Brown, but that passing offense, obviously with Tom Brady, even though he's 97 years old, I think they're going to give this defense some issues, and we'll see. I guess the big bright spot is the weather is supposed to be pretty nice, supposed to be low 70s and sunny. So that may be good for the Bills passing game. I don't know. The weather wasn't that bad in Jacksonville, and the offense still couldn't do anything in that game either.
How do you think Josh Allen is doing so far in his third year with the Bills?
It's interesting because I don't think he's terrible. I don't even know if he's getting worse. He might be stagnating. He might be plateauing from what we saw last year, because a lot has been made about how the Bills are facing two deep safeties all season, and that teams know Josh Allen can beat them over the top with deep throws. So they're defending him in a similar way as they defend Patrick Mahomes. The way they do that is you play guys deep and you basically say, hey, I want you to dink and dunk your way down the field. We don't think you're patient enough to do that, because we talk about Josh Allen and he gets on his little sugar highs and he does crazy things and he runs and he jumps and he leaps and he will throw the ball really far down the field. But what he is struggling with, I think, with this season is check downs and hot reads and just taking what the defense gives them. Because sometimes you just got to take a screen pass. You got to take your check down. You got to take your 5-yard pass, your short little passes here and there. Maybe use Cole Beasley more. I don't know. Cole Beasley, it's interesting. He was heavily involved in this offense a lot earlier in the season, and he's been kind of phased out the last few weeks. And I feel like Josh really should look his way a little bit more often. He's spoken about wanting to force feed the ball to Stephon Diggs, and he absolutely should do that. Diggs is a horse. You feed him. He is a monster. Give him the ball a lot of times. But Cole Beasley might be a nice little outlet that Josh should take advantage of, or even, have guys running. I don't know if it's have guys run shorter routes, but Josh, I'd like to see him use the short part of the field and the intermediate part of the field as well. And it seems like sometimes he's just trying to force things a little too often for my taste.
Do you think that the Bills could use like Cole Beasley or Emmanuel Sanders, like if they have to do like a check down play?
I think Beasley is like the perfect guy for it. I feel like he is not really used that much as a downfield receiver. He has been, but typically his strength is, little whip routes and hitches and like little slants, like anything in the 3-step game or any like short routes. Cause he's so precise with his footwork. Like he knows how to find soft spots and zones, and he knows how to beat guys if they're like up on him in press coverage. Emmanuel Sanders it's interesting. He's not really been used in the offense all that much. I think he's got something like 15 catches over the last 6 weeks. So it's easy for me to say, oh yeah, they totally need more Emmanuel Sanders. I wouldn't be shocked if they phase him out of the offense in favor of Gabriel Davis. He's a more explosive player. He's younger. He's going to be here next season. I can't say that about Emmanuel Sanders. So I think, to answer your question more succinctly, I certainly think Cole Beasley could be that guy. Emmanuel Sanders, I'm not sure. He showed some nice bursts the first few games of the season, and I don't know if he's old or what, but he's 34 years old, and his stat line is starting to show why 34-year-old stud wide receivers don't exactly grow on trees in the NFL. You just don't see them all that often.
How do you think the Bills will finish the season out this year?
I think it's going to hurt for a lot of people to hear this, but I think the Bills are going to scratch and claw and be a borderline playoff team, which is horrific when you consider what this team's expectations were at the start of the season. The Bills were in the AFC Championship game last year. Duh. Everyone knows that. Whatever. So going into this season, is the roster all that much worse? Not really. I think most people thought, okay, it's a better roster than the team that went to the AFC Championship game last year. So we should expect this team to win 12 games, 13 games, depending on how the schedule shakes out, and to really be favorites, not contenders, favorites for the AFC East. And now that's not the case. Now they're going to have to scratch and claw to be a 6 seed or a 7 seed. And I do think they will be in that conversation because you look at the rest of their schedule. They play Carolina, they play the Falcons, they play the Jets. Those are not gimmies, but they're not terribly difficult games to win also. So I understand they're going to be playing the Patriots again. That's going to be a tough game in Foxborough. The weather will probably be a factor. It's late December. We know this team doesn't play well in bad weather. They play in Tampa this week. That's a tough matchup. You know, Buccaneers are a good team, obviously reigning champs. And there's that Tom Brady guy who is very, very good at beating the Bills. So you have a couple tough games in New England and Tampa Bay. And then you've got 3 very winnable games in Carolina and in the Jets and in the Falcons. So that gets you, let's say they go 3-2 the rest of the way. You're looking at 10-7. I'm not sure that's good enough to sneak into the AFC playoff picture this season. So if they, now of course things change if they win this weekend, because then that really puts them in the driver's seat to win a wild card spot. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be tight. And I think Bills fans don't want to hear it, but I think that's the case. And I think we're going to have to be looking at calculations in week 17 and week 18 and people kind of saying, oh, well, if the Bills win and this team loses, and what's the tiebreaker if 3 teams tie for the last 2 playoff spots? And it's going to be stressful. It's going to be a lot of heartburn in Western New York and Bills Mafia as a whole around the nation. Nobody wants to hear that. I think that's what's going to be the case, though. And I think it's going to be fun to watch, though. I think it's going to be, like I said, a lot of heartburn, but it'll be entertaining for sure.
How do you think that, like, how many points do you think the Bills will have against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday?
87. No, I'm just joking. I think they will score. The offense has been inconsistent. They love to go every week, I feel like every other week they're good or bad. So I'm going to say the offense plays well, maybe not quite well enough to win, but I'll say I like 20 points. I don't know. It's like the first number that I think of that I'm not joking. I think I said 80 something before. They're clearly not going to score 80 points. You can freezing cold take me on that, on tag freezing cold takes on Twitter if they score 80 points this week. But I think 23 points. I don't think the offense is going to be incredible this weekend. I think they will be better because the weather is good. So actually, you know what? I'm going to say 24. I've talked myself into a 24 spot for the Bills because the weather is nice. They're going to be in Florida. Those are favorable conditions for Josh Allen to, play a little better. I didn't think he was awful against New England. I thought he made some tough throws, but I think he will be better this weekend. I don't see 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. We'll see.
Do you think that, like, they'll get, like, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss involved in the run game this weekend?
I'm not sure. I feel like they stubbornly were trying to get the run game going against New England, even when it was clear that it wasn't working. First down, run, second and long, run. I don't understand why, Brian Daboll went so conservative when you have a quarterback who can throw in horrible conditions. Remember the playoff game last year against Baltimore? Josh Allen threw the ball 35, 40 times, and it was a really windy day. It might have been a little worse on Monday. A little worse. It was like 50-mile-an-hour gusts. But you have a quarterback with a big arm, use him. I think they'll try to get Singletary and Zach Moss or Matt Breida going. I think they'll try to make it happen. I don't see this team as being really successful running the ball. They've only had 1 or 2 games for when Josh Allen has started where they had a 100-yard rusher. That's just not the identity of this team. So it's a little weird to see them try to force the run, even with the bad weather on Monday. I think they will try to get the run game going against Tampa Bay because Sean McDermott has preached, toughness and got to win the line of scrimmage. And to win in the NFL, you got to run the ball. You got to stop the run. So clearly they will try to run the ball again this weekend. I just don't know how successful they'll be because that's not how this team was built. And I don't think that's the identity of this team.
Do you have any questions for me?
I do. What do you think is going to happen this weekend in Tampa Bay? Do you think the Bills are going to, avenge the ghosts of Monday Night Football, if you will? Or is Tom Brady going to do what Tom Brady does and bash down the Bills repeatedly? It's basically what he's done his entire career.
I think the Bills will defeat their demons and put up 28 points or against Tom Brady.
Should be fun to see. I mean, you might need more than 28 points to beat Brady, though. I wouldn't be shocked if they hang up a 30 spot or a 35 points. We'll see.
Where do you think the Bills would end up? Do you think they would end up in a wild card spot, or do you think they would end up getting into the playoffs?
As of now, I think they're on the outside looking in. I think like I said, their schedule is not terribly difficult going forward, but they've got 2 really tough games on the road against quality squads. So I think the way this is going to shake out, they're going to be fighting for that 7 seed or that 6 seed. The division is not 100% out of play. I don't think they'll win the division. I think New England's in the driver's seat unless they completely self-destruct. But I think at this point, if I were a betting man, I would, that's tough. I'd probably say no, but I'm not terribly sure. I'm 55-45 that they will miss the playoffs. If I had to, you force me to say one way or another, I'll say they miss, but they very well could make it. And upset win over the weekend might make me change my mind. We'll see. I know it would make Bills fans feel a lot better, especially after how Monday went.
Do you think that the Bills will split the series between New England?
No, I think the weather, we talk about how bad the weather is in Buffalo late in the year. It's almost as bad in New England. When they go to Foxborough, it's going to be cold. There's a decent chance it's going to be windy. And those are not conditions that are favorable for the Bills. So even before we even go into the X's and O's of McDermott versus Bill Belichick, the weather is going to stink. And that plays right into New England's hands because they would love nothing more for another 50-mile-an-hour wind gust kind of night or kind of day. I think that's a 1:00 game, or it might be prime time. I don't remember. But point is, it's probably going to be cold. It's probably windy. And whatever pass plays Bill Belichick was diagramming for this week, he could probably use all of them because they only threw the ball 3 times and they still beat the Bills. So I'm not feeling super favorable about the Bills' chances in New England. I think it's a winnable game. I mean, this past Monday, they didn't get blown out. It was a close game. Came down to a couple plays here and there. It was a pretty close game. It's a winnable game in New England. I'm not sure I see it. It's just a lot going against the Bills in that game.
What's your opinion on Dawson Knox?
He had a tough game on Monday. He had a couple pretty lousy drops, which that's been an issue for him throughout his career. And it's a shame because earlier this season, he was pretty sure-handed and he was making some tough catches. He was making the routine catches as well, and he was bowling people over. And he's a bit of a size mismatch out there because he's big and he's strong and he's fast. And when he can put it all together, he's a dangerous tight end. He's one of the better tight end threats in the league when he puts it all together. The problem is, I don't know if it's a mental thing, a concentration thing, the fact that he has not been a full-time tight end for all of his life, but he just has trouble making catches sometimes. I mean, he had a couple of brutal drops on Monday, which is a shame because he gets open, he runs decent routes, and if he just hauls in the pass, sometimes he looks upfield before he corrals the ball with his hands. He's looking up the field, and like that's a mental thing. Like, you can work with a jugs machine all you want, you can catch however many balls you want, but if you're turning your head upfield before you have the ball secured, you're not going to secure the ball. The thing's going to pop out. And I just think Dawson Knox, I think he can turn it around. I think he could very well go for 100 yards this weekend and give Gronk a run for his money for best tight end in that game on Sunday. But I think he knows too, it was a tough game for him on Monday, and I can't wait to see how he bounces back, though. I think he's a very dangerous player.
Yeah, I saw a few of those drops when Allen passed it to him, and it looked like some of the passes he was dropping them like before he had it in his hands, or like
Yeah.
when Allen threw it to him, he was looking upfield before he like caught possession of the ball.
You gotta catch the ball before you get all fancy and look up the field. And I'm sure Dawson knows that. He probably got screamed at by, Sean McDermott and all the offensive assistants. They're probably all screaming at him, like, catch the ball first. Like, yeah, yak is great. We love yards after the catch, but you got to make the catch. That's just a mental thing.
How do you think Leslie Frazier is doing with the defensive side of the ball?
Well, Monday was interesting because he only faced 3 pass attempts. I think he's one of the better defensive coordinators in the NFL. I think the Bills' defense has been, for the most part, very good this season. It helped to get Star Lotulelei back after he took off last season because of COVID. They keep all of these defensive linemen and they're rotating them. And I thought Harrison Phillips had a very nice game on Monday. I know he's kind of only playing because Zimmer got hurt and he will not be playing for the rest of the season, but Harrison Phillips has stepped right in. He's been a nice player. And for the most part, the secondary has been good this season. We look at the losses that the Bills have had. I mean, we've talked about New England a fair amount. They got run over against Tennessee, but Ryan Tannehill didn't really do much throwing the ball in that game. Pittsburgh was kind of a weird one. They kept the Steelers' offense in check for most of the way. They didn't get destroyed. Najee Harris was only averaging 2 yards a carry. Big Ben made a couple nice throws, though, when they lost that one. And then Jacksonville, the defense played great. Look, you lose 9-6, you're not going to blame your defense. You give up 9 points the game, you should probably win that game most of the time. I think generally most of the season, the defense has been really good, and that's a credit to Leslie Frazier. It'll be interesting to see how the defense plays without their best player in Tre'Davious White, especially on Sunday with a really tough matchup against the Tom Brady, who he can sling the ball all over the field, and Rob Gronkowski is 1,000 years old, but he's still a very effective tight end. He's still catching touchdowns in bunches. And like I said earlier, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, I remember their names now. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are an absolute nightmare for defensive coordinators to deal with, especially a defensive coordinator who's missing his best pass coverage player in Trey White. So, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are, obviously they're really good players. Levi Wallace is I think he's a very good second corner. People have been howling for his head and trying to get him benched for 4 years, it feels like, but he always just outlasts every player that they throw his way. And we'll see what Dane Jackson can do. I don't know how much man they'll do because Dane Jackson one-on-one against Evans or Godwin's a tough challenge. But I'm excited to see what Leslie Frazier will dial up to try and knock Tom Brady out of his rhythm, and we'll also see which Leonard Fournette maybe we get. Maybe it's playoff Lenny, or maybe it's the Leonard Fournette that got cut by Jacksonville. So we'll see.
Where could my listeners or viewers find you at?
I am on Twitter, Ted Goldberg TV, TEDGOLDBERG TV, and that's probably the easiest way to find me. I am also on TV at Spectrum News. If you watch, turn your cable box off, turn it back on, you're on Spectrum News. Some days I'm on, some days I'm on. You can see my face. Some days I'm not. Today I am. Went to Sabres practice. Talk with Don Granato about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and whether or not they want to bring up prospects and whatnot. So if you can't find me on TV at Spectrum News, you can find me on Twitter at Ted Goldberg TV.
Did he say like if Malcolm Subban is going to be back for the next few games or so?
So Malcolm Subban is doing a rehab skate. He is not practicing. He is doing a rehab skate. He did a rehab skate today. Granato said tomorrow he's going to do another rehab skate and potentially go a little harder. And depending on how that goes, he could potentially be back against the Rangers on Friday, although he sounded a little pessimistic about that. But the encouraging thing with Malcolm Subban is that it does seem that the injury is minor. The fact that he's doing a rehab skating is somewhat somewhat encouraging, even though we were talking about Craig Anderson doing rehab skates and then he was month to month about a day later. So that's not always the case, but it does seem like Malcolm Subban will be back sooner than later. I don't think he will be playing on Friday though. That's just a hunch. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen played pretty well last night. Give the kid another shot. I mean, okay, he gave up the lacrosse goal or the alley-oop goal with Trevor Zegras and Milano, but okay, fine. That was an incredible play. You tip your cap. And he gave up one other goal all game. So give him another shot. Why not?
Thank you for tuning into Let's Talk 716 Sports. Thank you to my special guest, Ted Goldberg, and go Bills.
Thanks, man.